In light of the recent events in Minneapolis, Minnesota, of ICE murdering two people senselessly with no cause, has outraged not only me, but the entire country. But the blame lies at the feet of many people. But ultimately, it lies at the feet of the murderer and chief, Donald John Trump. He wanted this. He got this. He's going to continue to do this. And I feel that this is a master plan to declare martial law in this country because that's what he wants. He doesn't like us. He doesn't care about us. And he's getting his way because he has sycophants like Kristi Noem, like Bonavino, and Tom Homan, and the rest of his administration, if we're going to call out everybody like we should. So with all of that said, I picked a guest to come on today that is a dear friend and the finest person in politics today as far as I'm concerned. She pulls no punches. She calls out her own party when it needs to be called out, and she fights for people's civil and human rights, healthcare, and everything else that she can. Please welcome back to my show today, again, my dear friend, the one and only Representative Gloria Johnson of Tennessee. All right, one of my favorite people that comes on the show from time to time and always brings it, pulls no punches, is Representative Gloria Johnson from Tennessee. I see you dressed in the pretty blue. You got the, like, kind of like me, the thing there. What's the temperature today, you said?
Well, it's supposed to get up to 43, but it's going to drop down to single digits. And, we were calling this the snowpocalypse weekend. In Knoxville, where I am, we didn't get that much snow, but we are definitely going to have ice tonight. So they're expecting, a lot of people have already lost power where it's colder and they had more snow, but we're expecting, to have power problems and everything this weekend. So.
Well, I promised the people watching this show, because I know Representative Johnson for a long time now, that she won't get on a plane and go to Cancun like someone, and I don't want to take credit for their little name. I think they call him Fleddy Cruz now instead of Ted Cruz,
Yeah.
which is a good one. Okay, I've got several talking points I want to cover with you. The first one is ICE, but I want to read something and then talk about on the other side.
Sure.
So for my audience, I want to remind them from 2009 to 2012, I worked as a program manager on a government contract with a staff of 7 at DHS for the directorate, which was NPPD. Never during that time would we have someone as incompetent running it as cosplaying Barbie, Kristi Noem, who was in charge of the animals at ICE. As well, I told Debbie when Trump won the election in 2024 that his administration would not have enough ICE agents to do Trump's bidding, that they would deputize horrible people to include J6ers Trump was going to pardon and did on his first day, as I call it now, this is just me, in the shithouse. I was right on both accounts. One other point I want to make, because I'm extremely pissed at the following Democrats who all need to be primaried as far as I'm concerned. Representative Don Davis of North Carolina, Tom Souza of New York, which really pisses me off being a New Yorker, Henry Queller of Texas, Vicente Gonzalez of Texas, Laura Gillen of New York, another New Yorker, Maria Glusenkamp Perez of Washington, and Jared Golden of Maine, who voted to fund Department of Homeland Security. And which makes me even more mad is a couple of those people are Hispanic, by at least their last names. Maybe their spouses are, if they're women. So what I want to get from you is obviously your thoughts, but talk also to the point that I just made as well, Representative Johnson.
I'm ashamed of Democrats that would vote for the killing of American citizens exercising their First Amendment right, being killed in the streets, literally shot in the face. There is no excuse for it. We need to abolish ICE. And that we definitely need to defund ICE. There's a Senate vote coming up, and I would hope there would be a bipartisan effort to not fund whatever this is with these ICE folks cannot be reformed. We, as a country, do not have a secret masked police force that are above the law. That is what authoritarians and that is what fascists do. And this is can be likened to, I see people sometimes arguing on social media, is it like the slave catchers or is it like Nazi Germany? And there are elements of both.
Yes.
It is both, and quite frankly, because we know in Tennessee what mask vigilantes wreak, because Pulaski, Tennessee is where the KKK started. We know what this is. We can't be afraid of calling it what it is and comparing it to what it is like. And we have to abolish ICE. And I'm very proud of the Progressive Caucus in Tennessee, because we've actually got legislation to do what we can in Tennessee. Now, of course, there's a super majority of Republicans. Passing that legislation is tough. But if you don't bring legislation, you don't have a conversation. And so we've got legislation to keep ICE out of churches and schools and hospitals and shelters. We've got legislation that says ICE cannot wear masks. We've got legislation that says state dollars cannot be spent to coordinate with ICE. If they want our folks to coordinate, then the feds need to pay for it. But yes, we believe that we need to abolish ICE.
I absolutely agree. And I'll be honest with you, when they said defund the police, I was never a defund the police slogan person. I said we need the police, but we need to we need to retrain, we need to do stronger psychological profiling when we bring them into the police force. We need to get rid of these people that have constant reports, bad reports on them. They need to go. But I absolutely agree with abolishing ICE. It needs to be destroyed. And you know what? So, and if I may add, and if you want to say something, that's fine about ICE. And I'm gonna curse on this. What's so fucking hypocritical to me is these same people wearing masks were the same ones that couldn't wear them during COVID to keep people alive. Okay, regardless of how the science changed, and Fauci didn't always get it right the first time, but it wasn't intentional. We know if you have a brain that science is ever evolving. But they said masks continuously was a good thing. And when Trump got sick, he wore a mask when he came back and he ripped it off for the thing at the stage where they shot it twice up at the balcony of the White House. But these are the same people that said don't wear a mask, and they attack people that still wear masks today because it's their right in this country. I'm not going to tell them, but in the job of ICE, they're wearing it because they don't want people to see who they are, and it is just like Nazi Germany. And I never thought about it with slave catchers, but you're right, and you're absolutely right, and I concur.
Yeah, and what all this whole ICE thing has been for the Trump administration is a way to pay back the J6ers and the Proud Boys, because I'll guarantee a whole lot of these ICE folks are pardoned J6ers, Proud Boys, people from racist organizations. They are clearly so many misogynists. They just absolutely hate women. You see them go after women.
Yes.
Specifically very often. And I feel like they went after Alex because he was protecting a woman. That's what he was. He saw a wrong and tried to get between them and not threaten anybody. And so, thank God we have video to watch these state murders. They're still trying to lie about it. I see them trying to lie about folks that are disappearing here in Tennessee. In Knoxville, a friend of mine was disappeared, and the statement they put out to the media was that he had a prior conviction for felony meth. He absolutely, go to the police records, go to the court records, absolutely never charged with meth. But they lied to the press and said he had a felony meth conviction. Then, just this past week or two, there was a situation where ICE converged on a construction site, going around guns blazing, chasing people because the people just scattered across a school, the schoolyard, never alerted the school to anything that was happening. One young 18-year-old was followed in his truck, and then they crashed up his truck, broke his windshields, disappeared him. And he's 18 and an American citizen. And they tried to get the judge to be able to hold him, saying he was Antifa, an organization that doesn't exist.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
You know, I hope that everybody in this country is Antifa, because all that means is anti-fascist.
Thank you.
And people need to not be afraid of that term. And I have my Antifa necklace because I am anti-fascist and I am fighting to save this democratic republic and to keep democracy as the guideline for this country. And one thing that when we're talking about ICE that I think is so important that people are missing, and I think when you talk to people who maybe think, well, they're going after the bad guys, here's what we need to remember. The reason we have a U.S. Senate and a federal Congress and we have state legislators is because we sit down and we write policy that works for everyone in this country, or the majority of people in this country. So if you think immigration is a problem, and yes, there are problems within immigration that need to be solved, here's what thinking people and people who really want to solve a problem do. They sit down at the table and they write legislation for immigration policy. How do we let people in? Under what circumstances? What is the path to citizenship if you're coming here and doing what you're supposed to do? Throughout America's history, that's how we solved problems. Donald Trump, we have a Republican in the presidency, a Republican Congress, and a Republican Senate. They could sit down, write legislation for policy that works, and pass it tomorrow. But they're not interested in solving the problem. Mass deportation is not policy. It's a chaotic theory. He is being a chaos agent and using this to divide us neighbor against neighbor and to divide us so that we don't win an election in 2026. This is all about a way to scare people to death and to divide them so that they can hold power. And we have got to realize that if they were interested in solving a problem, they'd sit down at a table and they would write legislation. And so remember, that's how we solve problems before Donald Trump. It is always how this country has solved problems. And stop saying that they're going after the bad guys, because we know that more than the Cato Institute, which is a conservative organization, has said more than 70%. And people need to understand the facts about immigration. Most people are here legally, but maybe have overextended or something like that. Most people who are here, it's not a crime to be undocumented. It's a civil penalty. Rarely, on some occasions, if you've left the country and we're told not to come back and you come back, it can be a crime. But for the most part, being here undocumented is normally just a civil penalty. It's not a misdemeanor. It's not a felony in most cases. And understand, there's a reason. They're not going to gangs and arresting people or violent criminals.
No.
They're going to meet them at their meetings where they are doing what they are supposed to be doing as required by our law.
Yes.
So the fact that we are not following our own Constitution, Barack Obama
3 million plus, I think he
deported more people than Trump.
Yeah.
But Barack Obama did it by following our Constitution and our laws. Trump has no interest in our legal processes and solving problems. He's doing this to terrorize and divide. Remember that. If he wanted to solve it, he has the majority across the board, and they could solve this as a problem that works for Americans, and they don't have an interest in doing it. And they are arresting American citizens. They are arresting people with the right documentation in this country. They are not arresting criminals. And you will hear when they talk about, well, do you want, to be raped or killed by an undocumented immigrant? And they always name the same 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
Do you want me to give you a list of everybody raped or murdered by a white man? Because, honey, it's going to be pages and pages and pages and not 4 names.
And I want to, since this is such a hot topic, and I'm so fucking angry. I'm not saying you say this, but I'm saying it on my show. I'm now, my new name for him, and it's gonna remain till he leaves office, so hopefully sooner than later, is the murderer in chief. When you have a couple of things I want to state. You talked about legislation. I am not a fan of Langford from Oklahoma. However, people remember they had bipartisan a bill that would have been, at that point, when Joe Biden was president, the most comprehensive bill to deal with the border. A Republican got Democrats to sign off. Trump said, and I quote, kill it because it'll give Joe Biden a win and we don't want that. So to hell with the country, to hell with your party, but they don't care. Now Langford doesn't say anything anymore, okay? But he did say at the beginning, he did have a little bit of testosterone at the very beginning of that to say, they killed it, and this is why they killed it. But now it's old news. When you see commercials of Christy No, cosplaying Christy No, who says, if you turn yourself in and leave, we'll give you, I don't know what it was, like $1,500, something to come back. You think they're going to let you just come back, okay? That's ridiculous. It aggravates me too, and I call it out, doesn't matter who it is, that I see Hispanic people that still support, like I named a couple Democrats that have Hispanic names that would vote for Funny Nice. Well, they ultimately Funny Nice, Homeland Security. That would say they're still with Trump. He doesn't like you. He also, one thing I want to add to this is he doesn't like that this country, which I love, and my favorite word in Webster's dictionary is diversity. On both sides, the Jews and the Italians on my family came through Ellis Island. I love diversity. This country was built on the back of black people and foreigners, immigrants that came to this country for a better life. Unfortunately, black people built this country and they weren't treated the same, even though immigrants weren't treated so greatly back then either. When they came to New York, it said they stamped it WAP for without papers. They had signs in New York stores, no need for Italians to apply, and so on and so on. But they are scared that the country is not going to look like you and I, where you and I are comfortable with the country represent. That's what I loved about Joe Biden. There was things I didn't like, but one thing I always gave Joe credit for, he made his administration look like the country, including LGBTQIA+, women, black, white, other in his cabinet, because that's the country, that's the voting bloc, if we want to be honest. And that's another huge part of it. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up, because the FBI is playing into this, and I call him Cash App Patel, who's disgusting. He needs to go back with Bonagino, who blocked me on Twitter a long time ago. 2 clowns. I know your father used to work for the FBI, correct?
Yes.
What would he say seeing a Cash Patel and FBI saying, we're not going to work with you in Minnesota? Oh, I got one more point after that. I got to write down. But what would your dad say?
He would be horrified, especially for the fact that one of the the president's administrative airplanes is often at Nashville Airport, and it's Cash Patel using, presidential administrative airplanes to come and see his girlfriend on the weekend. How gross is that? We are paying for this clown who is literally a joke, a fool, and a moron when it comes to understanding what the FBI does. It's remarkable to me. The thing that I'm just constantly, I said something last week, and I feel it to my core. These people are evil.
Yes.
And I thank God that they are dumb and evil. Because if they were smart and evil, this would be a hell of a lot harder for us to fight against. But I'm sorry that most of the elected officials here are just dumb. They do not understand. It's kind of like they act like they're Christians and they don't know what the Bible says. They act like they're patriots, but they clearly don't know what our Constitution says. We have a state senator who just wrote legislation that wants to make it a law that you cannot run for in Tennessee. You can't run for U.S. Senate as a naturalized citizen or someone with dual citizenship, and you can't run for Congress as a naturalized citizen or as someone with dual citizenship. When our Constitution, not an amendment, but our Constitution clearly lays out that those people can run for office. You are so dumb. You talk about you love the founding fathers. That's what the founding fathers wrote. And you're trying to write a bill that goes against the Constitution. These dumb, cowardly, scared white men are a danger to all of us. And we need to vote them out. And then we need to, those who have broken the law, we need to indict them.
Yes. Yes. One more thing I want to throw out, and then we'll move on to the next talking point. Tell me if I'm wrong with the thing I'm about to say. You said it earlier. They're going after people on their jobs. They're going after people in church. It's not a crime. It's a civil, what did you say? Civil, how'd you say
Civil
it?
penalty, yeah.
Civil penalty.
Like a traffic ticket.
Right. This is what I don't understand, and it disgusts me. You go eat in a Mexican restaurant, there's a very good chance that some of those people are undocumented, but you eat the food and you love it. And good for these people calling them out in the restaurants. Because I don't think, I didn't used to be, I'm going to be honest with you, I never really was a progressive. I was very liberal, especially social, but I was kind of more, I'm becoming more progressive every day because honestly, when I listen to Mamdani, and you and I have talked about Mamdani, that's the future. And I want him to be successful to show Democrats like Hakeem that really would endorse him, and Chuckles Schumer, who I want them to go. I hope he doesn't become Speaker of the House. I want them to see that this can work. He may not get everything done, but at least he's trying and he cares about people. But correct me if I'm wrong here. I think the number, and I could be off, is about 3% of anybody that they're deporting that is the people that need to be deported. But our side has never said the following that I know of, that immigration is broken, that we need people to come here legally, but we need more immigration judges to process them quicker. We need to fix these problems at the border, and we need to find a better path to citizenship because these people are coming to this country, working very hard, paying taxes. It's a tax base. It's a huge tax base to the country. They have mortgages. They have car notes, so they're putting money back in the economy. They're productive citizens. They're out on roofs when white people won't do them jobs. You see them on a roof, 110 degrees in the heat. They're doing roofs. But you want to come on the roof and arrest them. Why don't you deport, as we always said, the MS-13, the bad people, the small element, and give them out. We don't see them in the streets. We don't see undocumented immigrants attacking the state capitol, beating Capitol Police with the American flag in my shadow box. We don't see them pepper spraying them, throwing fire extinguishers. We don't see them killing ICE agents on the street. We see them killing Americans, but I don't see any of these undocumented people. Where in Minnesota, they're going with them to take them to work. Why don't you help them get a path to citizenship? Nobody on our side is saying that immigration in this country is done right the way that it needs. It needs to be expedited. And these people are showing an allegiance to a country that is showing them, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if they're undocumented and they're paying taxes still, correct? They can pay taxes, right? I got that right? Okay.
Yes.
They can't collect benefits, right? Isn't that right?
They cannot collect benefits, no.
But they say they are. But Trump says the Somalians are collecting welfare in huge numbers, and especially if they're undocumented. How the hell is that possible?
Well, it's a lie. It's just a lie. Understand that everything that they are saying almost is a lie. And like it was very interesting because this came up in a committee here in Tennessee in the state legislature, and it is the same in Minnesota. The fraud in Medicaid, someone asked, one of the Republicans asked our Department of Health and Human Services, how many undocumented workers, what we call Medicaid in Tennessee is TennCare. How many undocumented immigrants are getting TennCare? And they said 0 because they cannot get it. And this is the Republican administration that said that. And then they said, most of the time when there is fraud in Medicaid, it comes from providers and it does not come from people. And the situation in Minnesota was a white woman who started a process to defraud Medicaid. And it was not from clients, but again, it was from the aspect of administration. And so she pulled other people in. Some of them happened to be Somalian, but they did not orchestrate this or whatever. And it doesn't matter who it is. If people have done something wrong, then definitely prosecute.
Absolutely.
They prosecuted this woman. I mean, they took care of that fraud. This is made up because of the administration's hate for people like Ilhan Omar and for the Somalian people, and because he hates Tim Walz. Know that every time that the man in the white supremacy house, every time, that's what Elizabeth Booker, who is on a lot of social media, she calls it the white supremacy house, and I really love that.
Yes.
But that is their targeting different areas that they specifically hate, and they are trying to divide people. But what they don't understand, I hope everybody is watching Heather Cox Richardson daily, because she really gives a good talk about how to get involved and how important it is that we keep showing up.
That's an African American. Is that it? She's an African American lady?
No, Heather Cox Richardson is a historian, and she is a white woman.
Okay.
But I can tell you that half of America's suburban moms follow her, and that's it's really important. And she just gives good practical advice at how to get involved and why it's important to stay involved. Yesterday, when I was waiting for the snowpocalypse, I watched the documentary on Molly Ivins. And oh my God, please, people need to watch that documentary. We need a Molly Ivins right now so bad. And I also watched James Baldwin, I Am Not Your Negro. It is so important to watch these things right now because everything that they're saying is happening right now. And it is just clear racism. That's, it's racism, it's misogyny, but fascism comes to this country through racism. And that's just a fact. And we've got to be aware of that. And we need people who, with white privilege, to be there in standing up and putting our bodies on the line and protecting the most vulnerable.
I absolutely agree. Okay, next talking point I want to go into is healthcare, where the murderer-in-chief has another concept of a plan, which makes no sense. Talk to healthcare if you would.
Well, I mean, the reality is that sometimes some of these Republicans, it's happened. I've heard a couple. I've heard the president accidentally, get sort of close to the point, which is these insurance companies should not be getting all this money. That's why we need a Medicare for all. We are the only developed nation that doesn't provide health care for its citizens. And we can do this. We should be able to do this. Tennessee, I live in a state that did not expand Medicaid, but I want to kind of talk about how all of this is related together, because what we're seeing in Tennessee and a lot of other states, and certainly in red states, is we have most Tennesseans are not able to afford a home. Most Tennesseans are struggling to meet their grocery bills because the grocery costs have gone up so much. This last year, Tennessee saw the biggest and the most expensive residential utility bills in our history.
Ours went up too in Indiana.
We have 700,000 people that don't have access to affordable health care. With the big ugly bill, we're going to have at least 200,000 more lose their care. This will devastate not only our rural hospitals, but some of our urban and suburban hospitals as well. So then we've got childcare costs in Tennessee. Childcare for an infant or a toddler is about the same as the average university cost for a college kid. And we have a childcare desert. We have deserts, childcare deserts all across Tennessee. So they can't afford housing. They're losing their access to health care. They can't afford groceries. The United Way says that 44 to 50% of Tennessee families with children are food insecure. That's no small number. That's up to half, possibly half. And then in the legislation that we saw, you want to hear the legislation we heard last week? We heard a bill that was an anti-drag bill. That bill doesn't help anybody in Tennessee. It's just hate legislation.
Yeah, of course it is.
We had a and on that bill, the Republicans like us to get on a list to speak. They don't just call on you if you raise your hand. I can raise my hand for an hour to speak on a bill and they will not call on me. Well, I got on the list. There were only 3 people on the list to speak on this bill, this anti-drag bill. They called on 2 of them. It was my turn to speak, and they just called the question and did not allow me to speak. The next day, on Tuesday, the bill we had was a bill to honor Charlie Kirk. And of course, many of us raised our hand. Before anyone could speak, they called the question, and they have a supermajority, so they passed the bill.
Is Cameron Sexton a state? What is he?
He's the speaker. But
right.
Here's the deal. Charlie Kirk wasn't Charlie Kirk's thing. We need to talk about it. We need to have debate.
Yep.
So they were honoring Charlie Kirk, but not allowing debate on a bill that they brought. And this is something that happens every day on our House floor and in committee. They try to discourage debate. On the House floor, many times they'll allow 0 debate. What does this tell the public? When you are bringing bills that you refuse to debate on the House floor, because when I bring a piece of legislation, I will happily air it out for days on the House floor. I don't mind answering questions about how my bill works and how it's designed to work, and drill me on my bill. And I will happily answer any questions because Tennesseans, that's who the bill's going to affect. They deserve to know. They deserve to hear and see and watch that debate. We need people asking the question, who brings a bill and doesn't allow debate? What are they hiding? What are they afraid of? They are such small-minded cowards. That's what they are. Small-minded cowards that can't defend the legislation they are bringing. And that's what an authoritarian is. They just pass it without any discussion. And that is not how this process was designed to work. Because I can say, even when I first came into the House in 2013, the Republicans had a supermajority. The Speaker of the House was Beth Harwell. And I can say that Beth Harwell never left me standing with my hand raised. If you had your hand up, Beth called on you. If you were speaking, she did not cut your microphone. Even though she was in the supermajority, she understands the process of how you legislate, and that we have to ask questions and allow debate on legislation. And the fact that I was elected means 70,000 people sent me there to speak for them. I'm not talking for myself. I'm talking for the 70,000 people that sent me there. And my 70,000 people that sent me there are just as important as the 70,000 that sent the speaker there. just because he's the speaker does not make the people in his district more important than the people in mine. And they all deserve to have their voices heard.
When you're saying that, the name that came into my mind, I don't see anything unless, I mean, not nationally anymore. Where's Marsha?
Well, she's busy running for governor.
Oh, governor now.
Yeah, she thought she wanted to be in the Senate so bad, but she's just gonna ditch that to run for governor this year.
Unreal.
And so here we have a situation, and economists have all told us across this state, when Bill Lee walks out that door, our budget is going to be a disaster. I mean, it's going to be a disaster. They have given so many tax breaks along the way to billionaires and corporations, and then they have blown up our budget with vouchers that we are going to be in a budget disaster when he walks out the door. And then we're going to have a mental lightweight like Marsha Blackburn in charge if she were to win this election. And I'm talking about, she is not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Oh, that's obvious.
She's not even sharp enough to hire people who can solve a budget problem.
This is just me speaking. I don't think she's sober enough to be the governor, to be quite honest, because I've seen clips of her, and if she's not intoxicated, I don't know what is.
Well, you know, there are those rumors, but the thing that I know is I have never seen her demonstrate any ability to lead in a sensible way. And certainly, you know, she was responsible for legislation that made it near impossible to take drugs off the street in Tennessee. And you know, we have one of the biggest opiate problems in the country.
Wow.
And she contributed in large part for this because she carried water for drug companies.
Unreal. Okay. On that note, we're going to take a short commercial break and then hit another couple of talking points. Bad Brad here. I want to talk to you about sponsorships. If you're interested in being a sponsor on the Bad Brad Berkowitz Show, you can reach out to me via email at ringsidereport2014@gmail.com. That's ringsidereport2014@gmail.com, or call my office at 703-517-2155. I look forward to talking to you.
Fast life, the fast living. They see the ambition, they know I'm past driven. Look, we are not the same, this is not a game. I've been swerving through the city in and out of lanes. Yeah, cause if I see it, then I
win. All right, we're now back with Representative Gloria Johnson from Tennessee. Next talking point I want to get into, if we can, is education, where we have an absolute joke of a person in Linda McMahon as the secretary. As well as much as they can, they have tried to abolish the Department of Education. I don't even think they can spell education. I'm surprised they knew it even existed till Trump wanted it gone. But talk to education, if you would. And you kind of covered how people just aren't that bright. But okay, and let me add this: you're a retired school teacher, so I think you have a little bit of this is your wheelhouse. So go ahead.
Yeah, I taught for 27 years. Actually, one of the reasons I ran for office is I saw them coming to privatize our public schools and knew that that was a terrible idea. And we fought vouchers back for about 10 years, and they could never get it passed because Tennesseans do not want vouchers. But they flooded the zone with outside money from New York, money from all over this country, but not from Tennessee, because Tennesseans like their public schools. We know public schools need to be better, but you don't improve them by taking all their money away and putting them in private schools. So they have been going after this for years, and they could never pass it because once people started finding out about it, they showed up, they spoke out, all of those things, and we stopped the bill every year. Well, this last year, Bill Lee decided he was going to use the Helene hurricane situation in Upper East Tennessee to call a special session where so many people lost their home, were flooded out, homes washed away. He used that disaster as a way to push vouchers in a 3-day special session because he knew if it went all session, he couldn't pass it. So they did almost nothing for Helene, but passed vouchers in that 3-day special session. It was such a bait and switch and such a disgusting use of a disaster to turn a disaster to his political benefit, but not really help those Tennessee families that lost everything. And it's just sick and disgusting how they take advantage. The same way that Louisiana took advantage of Katrina to usher in all this privatization and just destroy their school system. So, we can all say that we need to improve our school systems, but how do you do that when Tennessee is 47th in funding education? 47th in the nation. You get what you pay for. And now Tennessee is now dead last in the Southeast region. Mississippi now funds education $1,000 per student more than Tennessee. We always used to say at least there's Mississippi, but now Mississippi is funding their students at a far higher rate than Tennessee. We are dead last in the Southeast region, and we are 47th in the nation. And now we are sending hundreds of millions to private schools for vouchers. And let me tell you something about these private schools. They do not have to hire certified teachers. They do not have to teach anything from our state curriculum. They do not have to test their students within the same test that we have to test the public school kids with. They have zero accountability. They can teach anything they want. And public dollars. And in the county of Knoxville, the state portion of a public school kids funding in Tennessee is $5,800. But a voucher kid at a private school gets $7,300 from the state, $1,500 more. And they have zero accountability for hundreds of millions. After just a few years, it'll be $1 billion. There is no place else in our budget where we spend $1 billion and don't have to show the public a damn thing about how those dollars were spent. Those kids, they don't have to, anything can happen. It is outrageous. And this year, they want to double the number of vouchers. And this is what Arizona did that ballooned their budget and made them $500 million short in their budget. And it's going to happen here in Tennessee.
Disgusting. You made me think of something. I want to do a flashback. And by the way, the last time you and I did a show was June of 2024. I cannot believe. I was like, look, I was telling Debbie,
wow.
I said, wow, it's been a long time. I want to do a flashback to a couple shows that we did. Are you hearing any more of that nonsense bullshit? I remember you told me one of the people, a lady called you and said they have litter boxes at school, and you went and talked to the school. Because I know somebody that from a state that tried to tell me that. And I told him literally, I said to them, if you can prove to me, I will have representative, even though she's not from your state, because she's dealt with this. If you can prove to me that they have litter boxes outside the classrooms in the state of Oklahoma, I will bring Representative Gloria Johnson back on. And if she's going to go to the Oklahoma, I'll go with you, because I don't believe it. And they came back and said, oh, well, I guess it was kind of like hearsay. You know how that riles people up. So I'm just curious with that. Is you hear anything about that again?
Well, this is why it's so important to talk about that bullshit when it happens. I literally went straight to my office after the senator and the representative said that in committee that was what they said, it was a crisis in Tennessee public schools. I went and I clipped the videotape, and I had myself sitting down under it in a video, just like, are you kidding? It was so dumb. So I made fun of them and I shamed them. And luckily, one of the senator actually said it was her school superintendent who told her.
I remember this.
Well, Thank God the school superintendent came out and said, I never said any such thing. So they were embarrassed back into their holes, and I haven't heard it again.
Of course.
But that's what you have to do. You have to call it out. You have to
Yes.
shame them and embarrass them for being damn fools.
I absolutely agree. I had childcare, and you briefly talked about childcare when we were talking about healthcare. Was there anything else you wanted to expand on childcare about?
Well, it's just that I have brought legislation that would add childcare seats across our state. And because it's my legislation or Democratic legislation, they just kill it every year. I even went to one of my Republican colleagues in this area and said, would you carry this bill? It's a great bill. It's to help these daycares. This one's not in your district, but it's very close to your district. Would you carry this legislation? And she said, I would love to. Well, then she went to leadership, and then leadership wouldn't let her carry one of my bills. And I said, I don't care. I won't sign on to it. I won't put my name anywhere on it if you'll just pass it to help childcare. Because even the United Way came to my office and they said they were trying to create childcare, and my bill would really help them across the state create more childcare seats. But they are cutting off their own noses to spite their face just because it's a Democratic bill. And I even offered to give it to them and leave my name off of it. But they just don't care about Tennessee families. They're going to do this crazy legislation. We've got one legislator who's got a bill who wants to get rid of, not allow any mRNA medicine. So, you know, obviously he's going at COVID vaccines, but there's also cancer treatments that are mRNA. These people are going to kill us all because of their ignorance. They're just so ignorant, and they refuse to look at the state's own facts and data on this. It's a Republican administration. Republicans run our departments. Read the data in your own departments, people.
Let me ask you this. This pops in my mind when you're talking about this, and because you talked about that lady. What was her name? Beth, you said? The Speaker of the House?
Beth Harwell, yes.
Okay. Even though she was Republican, she did some things right. I'm not saying you had to agree with her on everything, but,
right.
But you give credit where credit is due. That's how people like you and I are. What would possess in your mind, and you're there? We talk a lot via text. I know how toxic it is where you are, and I know how bad it is in DC. And I always tell my viewers that I was stationed in the DMV for many, many years. And when I would go to Georgetown or I'd go in DC and I go to a Chinese restaurant, I would see Democrats, Republicans who fought tooth and nail on the floor, but then they go have a beer or they got food and they're talking like you. Them days are over. I don't care what anybody says, those days are over. You can't do that with them anymore. But I'm curious, is it they know it's wrong. I don't care. I know some of them are dumb, but not all of them are dumb, Representative John. Some of them that's the bar.
No, they know
They're
it's wrong.
not fucking stupid. But here's and some of them are. I concede. However, you know it's wrong. You know that the way ICE is handling. You know that Robert Kennedy should have never. And I called out all the Democrats. I don't care who they are that voted for some of these people. You know as well as I do, and I'll get to the point in a second, that no Republican would have voted for Joe Biden's person if they had the opportunity to do it. It would be across the board. We yet had some, and people are surprised when I bring up names like, no, not him. I'm like, I don't make this up. I research everything I say because it's important to me to put out facts because there's so much misinformation from the left and the right and in the middle. They voted for these candidates. What do you see? Or actually, I shouldn't say what you see. In your heart of hearts, being a decent human being, I don't say anything I don't mean. What do you think it is, not just in Tennessee, but in DC, that they know it's fucking evil and wrong? ICE and Kennedy being in charge, and Noam and Pam Bondi, and all of these, Kash Patel, all these inept people. And little Marco is the worst of them all because he knows better. I never liked him, but he was a senator and he had some experience. He's the worst Secretary of State. He has capitulated completely to Trump. You can look at his fucking face when remember when he said, "Oh, Marco handed me a note." Marco was pissed that he did that, but he don't have the guts to stand up to him. I bet he still calls him little Marco in private. In your being, Why do you think at this point, even if people didn't like Republicans back in the day, they weren't as bad? I don't care what anybody says. They weren't as bad as they are today. This makes the Tea Party look like the choir boys. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's the case. I think that Beth Harwell still wanted government to function for the people. But that is, I think the difference is, and I don't want to necessarily say that all of these people are dumb. I would say that they're selectively ignorant, that
Okay.
they choose not to know the truth. But there are some who are what I refer to as true believers. And I like the true believers better than I like those that know better but are
Because at least
lying
you know where you
about it.
stand, right?
They're lying about it to keep their power. It's all about keeping their power. And most every person in the Tennessee legislature across the aisle, these small-minded men that are so concerned about keeping their power, you can just tell this stems from like when they were in high school and nobody liked them. I mean, these are the people that weren't the cool kids, and neither was I, but I don't have this desire to have power over people.
Yeah.
To me, the power that we have is lifting the voices of the people. But to them, they want to have power and authority of telling others what to do because they never had that in their life before. They were overlooked and they were passed by. And, how dare they didn't notice me before. But I feel like that's the majority of the people that are in elected office. They want this power. And there's so much of it is these terrified, scared white men who are afraid of losing that power as we become a multiracial, multi-generational society that loves its neighbors and doesn't care how you worship or what country you came from or who you love. I mean, how small a person do you have to be scared of everything that doesn't look and act like you? And scared of one day, Elon Musk just tweeted it out not long ago. I was horrified. Well, if we let there be more, I can't remember exactly what the quote was, but it was basically, wow, when they're in the majority, what are they going to do to us? Who would be afraid of that?
Thank you.
Somebody who knows that they have mistreated people and knows they're a huge bigot. Because I don't worry about that at all. I look forward to a time where it is not left against right, but it's right against wrong.
Thank you.
And it is billionaires that are trying to control us and using white families who are struggling to do their hate work. And people will ask me all the time in Tennessee, well, these people are just voting against their own interests. And I'm like, try to understand what is happening here. Republicans have the money and they have created the media outlets to reach people that Democrats aren't reaching. I'm not saying Democrats have the wrong message. Democrats' message is not breaking through because people aren't getting their media the traditional ways anymore.
Nope.
And Republicans have worked for years on these networks to get their propaganda through. So in Tennessee, these people that you think would be voting for somebody who cared about their health care, cared about cutting the cost of groceries and cutting the cost of childcare, these people are making minimum wage in Tennessee, federal minimum wage. They're working 2 and 3 jobs to keep the lights on, to keep food on the family for their table, food on the tables for their families, to get the prescription drugs their families need. They don't have time to follow politics as closely as I do. They don't have time. They don't know how their legislator is voting. They're voting Republican because they say we care about you, but every one of their votes does nothing to help Tennessee families. And so we have got to meet them where they are and help them to understand that the things that are keeping your family struggling are the fact that we refuse to raise the wage, that the state refuses to take the sales tax off groceries. Democrats bring that bill every year and the Republicans kill it. They refuse to vote for everybody to have access to affordable health care. These are the things that family need: childcare, paid family leave. We bring legislations for every one of those things every year, and Republicans kill them. And Republicans are going to spend this year, I think we have 5 bills on Charlie Kirk and creating Charlie Kirk days and all of this stuff. But they're not bringing a damn bill that's going to help a struggling Tennessee family.
I'm going to say this, and these are my thoughts, because you brought up Charlie Kirk a couple of times. I didn't wish what happened on him to happen. Let me preface with that. But he was a misogynistic pig. He was an evil racist that said on the airplane, which I went after him on Twitter. You know, my thing is get in the ring with me for charity. And none of them ever do. Said, I hope the pilot is not a DEI hire. He said, and this is what really fucking pisses me off with MAGA. You give them exactly what they say, and they didn't say that. He didn't say. He said some people would have to die to defend the Second Amendment. I didn't say that. He said that.
Yeah.
He argued with college kids that he knew a lot of them were not. When he went to England, I'm sure you saw the video. When he went to England, they handed him his ass. But he knew that college campuses, them kids really didn't know. They didn't know. And yeah, I know he was about, but it was so. Erica Kirk, instead of trying to tamp down, because I'm disgusted with her, she's a phony. She makes Tammy Faye, who in the end I liked, makes Tammy Faye's act look like a rank amateur. What she does with the drops in her eye, with the crying, all video been shown. You forced on us a Charlie Kirk day. You said, if we say, and I blasted Charlie Kirk with 4-letter words and everything else, that people need to be fired. People need to be this. But when you said every day the most vile stuff against Democrats, especially our former President Joe Biden, I actually probably one of the very few people to say this. I actually think what Donald Trump did during President Joe Biden's term, every day lying and lying and lying and lying, not pushing back on policies with opinion or fact, out and out lies. I think that's treason. I actually feel that's a form of treason. Now they want to come at us. They want to put Don Lemon in prison on the KKK Act. Don Lemon, he went into a church. He went in, they didn't burn the church down. They burned down the Capitol. They broke windows and beat cops. The hypocrisy of these bastards is on fleek, and it doesn't stop. And you mentioned about electric bills. Deb and I are in Northwest Indiana. Our water bill went up. Our town of Winfield bill went up. Our NIPSCO went up. They're being investigated. Their gas. And Kankakee. They all went up. But you have the sitting murder-in-chief saying utility bills are down. He's such a con man. We're the hottest we are. It's all bullshit. And he gaslights us. And you can't get them to even say in MAGA, because when you look at the polls that they've been having on MS Now, and they say 40% are okay with them, well, that's more. It's a little bit more than a third. And I always said I thought it was a little bit more than a third. That's MAGA. That's not even. I don't think that's independence no more. And I don't want to hear, 18 to 29. Now they regret their vote. You own your vote. You voted for this. Now you're getting the messed up part is people like you and I and your constituents that didn't vote for this, even Republicans, because I don't have a problem with Republicans. That's where people get me confused. I don't agree with conservative views, but I also don't have a problem with Republican that as long as I say ABT, anybody but Trump. I know what Reagan did with mental health. I know what Bush did with weapons of mass. I know what they all did. But I feel personally that none of them were ever allies with Russia. They would never sell us out to Russia. You never hear Reagan say that. That's how I feel. Both Bushes, Eisenhower, all of these people would never have said, even Nixon, who's a choir boy now, Watergate is nothing compared to Murdergate. That's what they should call this. Murdergate, what they're doing along with ICE. But I'm glad that you call it out. I appreciate that you call out both sides, because, and that was a question that Ty and I want to ask you. What Democrats out there, Representative Johnson, of course we know about Representative Crockett and we know them, But who are the Democrats that we're not hearing about that you may know in any state that are going to run or are running in 26 that need publicity? And we need to know strong Democrats, not weak ones, strong ones like a Mamdani.
Yeah, well, and that's why, one of my dear friends, Rep. Justin Pearson, is running in Memphis against incumbent Steve Cohen, who has served for years. And it's nothing against Representative Cohen. He's done some good things for Tennessee. There's no question. But I think we need people who are meeting this moment. And I think Justin Pearson is a voice we need in Tennessee to meet this moment. And a big difference I would call out was Representative Cohen welcomed Elon Musk and XAI into Memphis. And Justin Pearson is fighting against XAI, which is poisoning the air and the water in a Black community. They are operating illegally. And Pearson is doing everything he can to point that out.
Good.
I feel like some of these representatives who have been in office for a long time are kind of longing for, I wish it was like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I'm like, do you not understand? We don't want what we had before, because 10 and 20 years ago, it didn't work for Black people. It didn't work for brown people, and it didn't work for women. It might have worked for white men, but it didn't work. What we had before did not work, and we need something new. We need something better. We need this multiracial, multi-generational coalition and to move this country forward where we truly need to be, honoring the human dignity of every single person in this country and writing legislation to benefit hardworking American families.
And I want to piggyback off something you just said about women. I don't understand the mentality of some white women that support Trump, even after I said there's locker room talk. I put myself out there. There's locker room talk. I've done locker room talk. I've heard women do locker room talk about me.
I've done locker room talk.
Right. Oh, yeah. Hey, you see a good looking guy. Hey, you got a nice tush, whatever. Okay, fine. But in all seriousness, when he said, I can move on her like a bee because I'm who I am, that's rape. And that's because the wife who just had the flop documentary that they spent $40 million on, and Brett Ratner just asked the Me Too movement. I went to school with Brett Ratner. He was a creep then, and he's a creep now. She said, boy talk. No, it's not boy talk. That's rape. Okay? That's rape. But you have a group of white women that are, you want to talk about voting against your own interests? It was only the 1920s that women got the right to vote in this country. It was the 1970s when you could get a credit card in your own name and didn't have to have it in your husband's name.
And we've got Pete Hegseth tweeting a pastor who wants to get rid of the woman's right to vote. They are trying to take over an entire county in Tennessee with this mindset. And they all will sit there and tell you, yes, I think we need to get rid of the 19th Amendment.
Yeah.
And I wanted to the people who kept saying, a year or two ago, we said what the kind of things Trump was going to be doing. For those who were just saying, that's not going to happen, calm down. Guess what, folks? It's happening.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring up such good points. I want to piggyback off of that one too. You couldn't vote for the educated Black woman. You couldn't vote for the educated Black woman that said, I may have my numbers mixed up a little bit, but I want to say it was like 50,000 for new homeowners, or it was for small businesses. One of those numbers, I think she was going to give, I think both. When do you ever hear, and if someone comes on this video, because I get the MAGA, I love the comment, and it makes no sense. No sense. They attack my fedora and my earring, which makes, okay, whatever. That's their fight. So where does he talk about small businesses? Around here in Indiana, they're going under. Where is he helping small business? Then he talks about housing. Then he talks about he's not going to touch Social Security. You got Republicans that like that piece of garbage in Florida. Rick, what's his last name? Rick Scott. Rick Scott, is it Rick Scott?
Rick Scott, yes.
Who won it? You had the guy Mike Lee years ago who was caught on tape saying we're gonna do this to Medicare. And here's the thing: it doesn't affect Trump one single bit, because I'm gonna tell you something. Trump could lose all his money, and there would still be MAGA doctors out there that would operate on this rotten bastard, and he wouldn't pay for anything. But what I want to also say, where you're talking about people calling us out, I'm probably one of the few. And I used to get attacked. Debbie said before the show, she said, Brad, you're before your time. I used to get attacked. I said, you guys want to brag about Mark Cuban. Okay. But here's the reality. Mark Cuban said, and I quote, and I have receipts for this, when Trump won, he congratulated Trump and Elon Musk. Good. Why are you congratulating Elon Musk? He didn't run. He fucked up Doge. It did nothing at all. They were releasing his. Now, to your point about it being,
he got dumb, all the data. He got all of our data he wanted.
We got all of our data. But guess what? You talked to the point about dumb. Now, this is dumb. They fired people, and then they realized the next day, no, we need those people. We better bring them back. This isn't me making it up because I'm this liberal guy. This is all facts. And so to your point on that, the final talking point I want to cover is cannabis. Trump, I heard Trump say something about it. I had wished Joe would have went big on it and just legalized it. I don't smoke weed, but I don't care. I because of the things that Santino, we give him CBD, our little puppy, because he's fighting cancer. Okay, there's good stuff with it. I think that it should be. I think it should be legalized across the United States. First of all, from the tax point, because it's a huge tax base, but also because of medicinal purposes and other things. And I always said this, and maybe I'm wrong, but it was always my opinion, and this goes back years ago. I actually feel if they would have legalized it years ago, we might not have had some of the drug problems in this country that we eventually had. And I've talked to smarter people on this than me, and they've said, yeah, Brad, it is true. It might not have wiped out everything, but some of it would have been wiped out. So if you would talk about cannabis.
Yeah, I actually, before I left Nashville to come home for the snowpocalypse, I signed on to a bill with a Republican. It's a decriminalization of cannabis bill. And, there are some things that we can agree on because 81% of Tennesseans agree on cannabis reform. 81%, that's all parties. And Trump has now made it Schedule 3 instead of Schedule 1. But Tennessee, our Republicans are so ignorant. 2 years ago, we passed so that they could bring CBD in. And so we have all these businesses. It's at least a $200 million industry in Tennessee, CBD, the oils and gummies and things like that, which is not, the illegal plant, but it's the hemp plant. Well, just last year, they passed a bill that said we can't sell anything made from the hemp flower in Tennessee. So they just killed a $200 million industry. Now, what they did, this is why they're so dumb. They didn't make it illegal to do. They can't make it illegal to do or to have. They just made it illegal to sell. So we can buy it online from other states. Tennessee borders more states than anybody else. So I can go an hour into Kentucky. I can go an hour into Alabama or Georgia, and I could buy it there. So we're most of the businesses I've talked to in my area are moving their business to North Carolina. We just ended an industry, and this was all done because of the alcohol industry, because the drinks that they're making now with CBD people are using those drinks a lot, and the alcohol industry wants to shut them down. So what they did was they put all the drinks under our ABC, our alcohol laws, and then it made everything else that's made from the flower illegal because they didn't want that competition. It's all bought and paid for by the alcohol lobby.
Pathetic.
Yeah, and so they killed a great tax industry that brings taxes into the state for something that is legal in this state, but now businesses here can't make money doing it. And it would help our farmers so much because we're in a situation right now. I just met with some folks at the University of Tennessee on the ag campus, And one of their deans told us that Tennessee could lose up to 25% of their farms because of the tariffs. That's not even taking into account if Tennessee works with ICE and deports every one of our immigrants. That I can't imagine how much more of our farming industry. We have a county here, Granger County, that's very famous for growing tomatoes. Everybody knows Granger County tomatoes. And when I was running for U.S. Senate and I was up in Granger County, I had some migrant workers come to my event. And I asked a young woman there, I said, tell me about your day as a worker, and she said, I usually get up around 5 or 5:30. I have to have my mom to her farm by 6. And then as soon as after I drop mom off at her farm, I go to my farm a little after 6. And she said, I'm there till 9 o'clock at night. And this young woman was 23 years old. And all I could think was, I know for a fact, I could not find a 23-year-old American citizen who would go work a tomato farm from 6 in the morning till 9 at night.
Thank you.
Not gonna happen.
The same thing with roofs. I'm being honest. And then you get some. They took our jobs. How did they take your jobs? You don't want to do them no more. But you know what? It's since they want to deport all the immigrants, right? Undocumented immigrants. Let the Americans go in the fields and pick and see how much they bitch about it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. We're both Caucasian people. I get so tired, and you mentioned white privilege earlier, and thank you for bringing it up because I use mine all the time. I can't stand people that aren't honest enough. They listen to JD Vance. No one asked you to apologize for being white. No one's asked me. I'm not apologizing for being white. But what I will say is I have white privilege. I know if I go for a job that a person that is of color or is if they know outwardly that I know that they're going to, well, let's just use color, that I got a leg up. Bullshit if you say that that's not true. And I'm going to tell you something. I've said many times, you mentioned it earlier. I said, I wish there was no such thing as DEI. I wish there was no thing in affirmative action. Because you know what that would mean? That the playing field for not just people of color, especially, of course, always going to be people of color, but for women too, who forget that they're part of this too, then the playing field would be equal.
And disabled.
But it's not.
Disabled and veterans as well.
Thank you. And veterans too. It's not. The playing field is not level for everybody. I wish it was. America was never great. We have the potential, as I always say, it was never great for who? Women, black people, immigrants, and I can go down the list. Jews, which I'm 50%. But I'm a realist, and I love this country. I can't stand it right now. I would be lying because I don't recognize it no more, and I defended it for 20 years, 20 days. But I know that we have the potential to be so much better. Never great, because you're never going to get some of these racist bastards. And for example, we're going after undocumented immigrants, but we have an influx of white supremacist groups, which Trump is part of. We're not going after them, huh? We're partying, like you said earlier. Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, which we know are part of immigrants. You got Enrique Otero and Elmer. Don't call him Stuart Rose because he don't like the Elmer part. Elmer Stuart Rose with the eye patch, 20 plus years. They had a fair trial. He pardoned them.
Yeah.
You
got Patriot Front building a compound an hour from my house. And this group called Tennessee Active Club, which actually created a video targeting me and Rep Jones and Justin Canoe at the Tennessee Holler. And Justin Canoe actually got 38 gunshots into his house after this came out. So, this is real terrorism, just like ICE are domestic terrorists.
Yes, they are.
And we, I guess we've circled all the way back to the front. But when you keep people down, you pay them a low wage, you don't offer them health care, outpriced groceries, it keeps them so busy just trying to keep their family healthy and alive that they can't follow this closely and hold their elected officials accountable. So those of us who have that privilege and have the time are the ones that need to stand in those spaces and make space for those people that we're fighting for.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one more question before we close out. I'm going to point out that your picture in the back with the fist up, that's Justin Pearson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great picture. I love it. It's a doomsday question. It's an honest question, and it's a scary question. If we don't win back something in November, the House, I know the Senate is iffy, but it looks like we might have a path, and we should. We should. And I'm going to say this. I wish that, like you said years ago, that we need two parties. I'm sorry. And the third party thing, people say, well, the Democrats, third party so far, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. Yeah. John Anderson in 1980 who got a lot of votes. You had Russ Perot who took a lot of votes. And I think Ralph Nader might have got the most votes out of all of them. But two parties is where we're at. Would I like to see a third party? Sure. I like to see a progressive third party. I hope one day it comes. But doomsday question is if we don't win back and they stay in power some way, shape, or form, what's the country now going to be?
Well, it's going to get a lot worse. However, I think that we can win, and I think we has to have way more of a potential now to win both. I think we'll definitely win Congress, and I think we can win the Senate, and that is how we stop this. But you're right. We have got to go forward with something different and something new so that we can reach where most of us want to be. You know, people get super discouraged, and that's why I say it's really important to watch people like Heather Cox Richardson, who will tell you, I mean, really give you instructions on how to push back, why pushback is so important, and how to get involved. It's just so important. Watch that Molly Ivins documentary on Prime.
Spell her last name.
Oh, Molly Ivins, Ivins.
Okay.
She was a journalist from Texas. Fabulous sense of humor. But just the last few minutes, especially of that, really hit on what's happening now. And the same thing with James Baldwin documentary, I Am Not Your Negro. It is so pertinent to what we are seeing now. And the different ways people fight back. You know, there was Martin Luther King and there was Malcolm X and there were the Black Panthers. And we may not all have a comfort level at the same, but it takes all those groups pushing back and fighting back. And just because someone wants to do it differently than I do doesn't mean what they're doing is wrong. And so just kind of respecting that we all push back in the ways that we can. But the reality is we are going to have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations to really push back on this. And a point that Molly Ivins made at the end, and it's also a point that Heather Cox Richardson makes, is that they are really terrified of our numbers. They're afraid of us when we show up. That is why they are shooting people in the face to try to scare us back into our houses. And I'm not going to be scared back into my house. Not going to do it. I understand what's at stake. I haven't been, you know, every rally and protest I've been to in Knoxville is peaceful. Yes,
Yep.
You can bring your kids. You can do anything you want. I'm not saying it's not going to become different than that. You know, pay close attention. But there are ways to get involved. You know, for those who think there might be danger, call somebody who attends these things and find out what it's like. But we have all got to show up in number and speak out. As a matter of fact, my friend just told me in Nashville, because my aunt just called me from Chicago, but she lives in Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, in the suburbs.
Oh, I know where we've been there.
Of Chicago. And she's like, nobody in my area is doing anything. And I said, hey, look up, and there's got to be an indivisible group near you. They're always doing actions, join them. And so I got online and I found some and I sent them to her. But I said, you know, in my neighborhood where I live in Nashville, while I'm in session, just in East Nashville, they're coming outside at 7 p.m. at night, everybody coming outside together with candles and gathering together in the street and on the sidewalks and everything to acknowledge what is happening. So just any way you can come up with in your communities to show out and show solidarity and show up, because we've got to keep doing that. We've got to let them know that there are more of us that care about our communities than those who are being manipulated by this propaganda and these lies. A man emailed me today. I read the email and he said, I really want to know why liberals are okay with immigrants. And I thought, I could write this man a message, but it's going to take pages. I wrote him back and I said, hey, why don't you give me a call or give me your number and I'll call you? Because this is really a back and forth conversation. I don't want to type at you and then you read it and then, let's have a conversation. If people weren't staying in because of the ice, I'd say let's meet. But he sounded like he genuinely wanted to understand. And so you can't assume that this man sees everything I see because I know he doesn't look at the same stuff. He doesn't have the same algorithm as me, and he's not seeing the videos of people getting shot in the face. And so, I think I can have conversations with folks and maybe shed some light on some things that they're not aware of because they're being lied to and they're not looking for further than the sources that they always listen to. I always go to the other side to see what they're saying. And, I always check my sources because sometimes Democrats can get it wrong too. And so it's important to check, but you have to check reliable sources.
I say this all the time. And to go back full circle to the beginning with ICE, any decent president, or I want to say president, person, because there's still people, would not have jumped. You had Trump, of course, Nome is going to, automatically domestic terrorist. Not let's have an investigation, let's work together and have an investigation, even though we know they would taint it. But another decent president, whether Republican or Democrat, say, look, first and foremost, it's a tragedy that we lost, because they want to say it about Charlie Kirk. It's a tragedy we lost a human life, but they don't give our side the decency all the same. Well, let's have an investigation. Let's tamp it down. Let's see what comes out. We're all going to work together, FBI, whoever is in the COG, to work together, but not this guy. It's the same thing I said when that shit went down with Colin Kaepernick and he attacked him, because I said I would take a knee with Colin as a veteran that did a hell of a lot of years in the military, that it was his right to take it. I know why he took it. I'm not a fan of Black Lives Matter anymore, the upper leadership, because they found out that a lot of them stole money, but the cause was righteous. The leadership, I found out differently, and I don't support them no more. However, he had a moment in this country where he could have said, to prove, not that he's not a racist, but let's invite Colin to the White House. Let's invite some people on the other side. Let's have, like you said earlier, a dialogue. Let's have a dialogue. Let's sit, tamp it down, and let's talk. Let's hear both sides. Because like you said, some of these people are sincere and they really don't understand. And if they're asking a legitimate question and they're not playing games like a J.D. Vance, which, by the way, you mentioned bullying earlier, he's the quintessential case for being bullied, and now he's a bully behind the vice president podium. But he doesn't do that. Trump says, fire that son of a bitch. Get that bastard off the field. And then, and I'll close with this, when have you ever seen a president, you're only just a couple years older than me, Republican or Democrat, chiming in on Cracker Barrel, plays that they use in the NFL?
Well, Cracker Barrel,
that the Washington Commanders better change their name back to the Redskins. What president did this? None.
No president. And that is the thing that I hope we can get back, the decorum and the respect of the office and the respect and not punching down. We've never had a president that punched down an individual. The most powerful man in the country is punching down at regular citizens.
And Rob Reiner being murdered.
It's just disgusting. And, I worried, can we get back? I believe we can get back to that, to even better. I think that we can treat each other better. And, I get really tired when we use strong language on the House floor. I'm always professional. I don't use profanity, in any normal situation on the job. But they keep saying, well, you all need to be civil. You are bringing violent policy. You're expecting me to be civil when you're bringing violent policy that kills Tennesseans, but I'm supposed to be civil about it. I will be professional, but I will call you out for what you were doing.
Well, what you just said, because she just happened, I think yesterday. Pam Bondi, who I can't stand, folks, research Pam Bondi. She took 25,000 and she did nothing with Trump University. It wound up costing them 25 million when she was in Florida. She went after Minneapolis mayor for saying fuck. But Trump said fuck on the White House lawn. The hypocrisy. I'm not saying whether you should say it or not. I understand the frustration. I say it a lot, but I'm not in a political office. A lot of things that the way I say them, I wouldn't say out of decorum, things how they should be. You and I have a personal relationship, but on this show, I'm calling you Representative Johnson. Even if you say Gloria, unless you insist, I got to call you. I want to call you because I respect that you've been elected by your constituents to go to the state capitol and be a voice for them and stuff. And I agree with you. I hope it gets back, but this both sides shit, it's not both sides. You cannot like things that Democrats do, and there's things that I don't like that Democrats do. But I get tired of this both sides stuff because even if you say the most far left people in our party, if you want to say the squad, if that's the most far left, and I took up for them, and I don't always agree with the squad. However, they didn't try to overthrow the government. They're not trying to destroy democracy. The right is, and that's a fact, and I get so tired of it. I just heard it the other day and probably lost a friendship over it about this both sides. There's no both sides anymore. I wish it could be where we talk both sides, but it's not. And until the Republican Party takes back their party, the party of Lincoln or John McCain. I don't even like Mitt Romney, but I'll take Mitt Romney time. At least sometimes he's spoken.
In Tennessee, it's we always refer back to the Republican Howard Baker as a state.
Howard Baker, right. Right. So
and the days when he cared about good government for the people of Tennessee, that he really did. Now we might have disagreed, but he did because his opinions were just different, but he wanted good government and he cared about the people. All they care about is dividing the people right now. And we have to be honest about that. And we have to realize that it's us against billionaires and corporations. It's not us against each other. And that's what's happening. They're cutting all these services to regular American families so that they can give billionaires a tax break. When we know that that a middle class with more money in their pockets does more for our economy. When you have 1 million people shopping at Target instead of 100 people buying yachts, that's when this country does better, is when people have money to spend just to keep their families going. And that's what they're trying to keep us from remembering, that it's about legislation that makes lives better for hardworking families.
That's a great way to close. Give your social media platforms where people can follow you.
Okay, I'm Vote Gloria J on Twitter and Instagram. My website is votegloriajohnson.com. And we're just going to be out here and keep fighting for the people, keep fighting for the democracy that we so desperately need, and pushing back against fascism, being anti-fascist, which is where Antifa comes from.
Thank you. I love you, friend. You need anything, you know where I'm at. You always got a platform. Anybody that you think should come on, they'll get the same treatment. I want to give people platforms, especially with us going into midterm elections. So thank you again for coming on, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. See ya.